Good evening, everybody, and we're live again. We're starting off tonight, February 1st, 2021, with our Black History series. And tonight's guest is none other than the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Mr. Boyd Rutherford. And I'm pretty sure if you're a Marylander, you know who Boyd Rutherford is. He's a very, very great man, uh, very good man. He's here tonight. He didn't have to do this, so that speaks volumes to this man. So we're just gonna go ahead and bring him in because we don't have him for very long. But he's giving his time to us tonight on the first day of Black History Month. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Terrence. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here, sir. How's the snow treating you?
Pretty well, as well as everybody else, I guess.
Yeah. So because I got you for such a short time, I'm just going to go ahead and just get right into it. You are the 9th Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, and the first re-elected Republican, and also being that you're also the first African American Republican re-elected to that office. Can you speak to when you guys were reelected and the magnitude of that? What did that feel like?
I mean, we were very pleased, to get the approval of Marylanders for a second term. I mean, of course, we were extremely pleased and happy the first time around, particularly since none of the so-called experts, prognosticators and political know-it-alls felt that we had a chance. I mean, even some of our friends didn't think we had a chance. So it was, really gratifying the first time and humbling the second time. So, it definitely is something special and an honor and a privilege that the people of Maryland have bestowed on myself and the governor.
And you're also an HU graduate.
Yeah. HU, real HU.
One of my ancestors on the Groche side was first African American to graduate from Caroline County to graduate from HU.
Oh, very good, very good.
So, you've been leading a charge to try to reform the regulations on job creators.
Yes.
Can you speak on that?
Well, that was one of the things we did early on, and we still, are constantly reviewing, regulations, many of which have been in place for many, many years, that came out of a time when we were much more of an industrial society and really didn't take into consideration technology, social media, apps. When we came into office, there were still regulations that didn't allow Uber or Lyft to do business in the state. And some of those had to be changed immediately to allow for that type of ride sharing to take place. And so there are a number of regulations that just, have been in place. Some of them have a particularly adverse impact on individuals, particularly if they've come out of the criminal justice system, often called collateral consequences. I lost the term for a moment. Most people do understand that there are some restrictions you put in place if a person has been convicted of, let's say, child molesting. Mm-hmm. You're not going to allow them to have a job in a school or in a daycare. But there's some that just don't make much sense. One that we did get changed was that if you had a felony or a misdemeanor in the past, you could not be an apprentice undertaker. Mortician, undertaker. And so it was something that meant that you could never be a mortician if that was the case. Um, there are others, including you can't work in a senior facility if you've had one of these offenses against you, no matter how long ago it was. And so we've been working to address those that, if put into place more reasonable regulations, if it hasn't been something that's fairly recent, um, if it's not something that's directly related to what you would be doing, to address that. But others were just, business related. And what we found when we went around the state and asked businesses what was their biggest issue with the regulations, it was less the regulations that were in effect and more that they weren't getting responses from government. And sometimes the interpretation of the regulations was different by county. And so that led to the governor's customer service initiatives and pledge by our agencies to be responsive to those who are calling in for assistance, be it a business or be it a private citizen. That you're supposed to return the phone call. You're supposed to, be courteous. All these things that you're kind of taught as a child by your parents, things that we had to put in place and make sure that our folks were doing the best they could.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. Um, the cycle of the other initiative, the cycle of poverty for from generation to generation.
Yes. Yeah. Multi-generational poverty. What we have been doing is trying to adopt what's called a two-generational approach. And that's trying to knock down those barriers to, as I say, the off-road to poverty. Many of our government programs basically hold you in place. If you're poor, we give you just enough of what you need to survive, but we don't help you if you're ready to, move on. And some of the barriers in place have to do with income levels, where the more money you make, you start to lose certain benefits. And there needs to be much more of a transition period. That a person may decide they're not going to take that promotion because they may lose their health care, or the subsidy for their health care. They're not going to take that promotion because they may lose the child care subsidy. So there needs to be some at least transition period that if you get that promotion, you don't just drop off the rolls right away. You get a period of time that you can, accumulate some money so that you can, deal with that reduced benefit. So we don't want people to have to make this decision between getting, coming off the government roles or losing benefits, and it becomes an economic decision that they make, that it's not worth it taking that extra, $2 an hour because they're going to lose certain benefits.
Right.
So we put a few things in place. There's still more to do in that area. They call it the benefit cliff. There's still some more steps that we need to make with regard to that.
And the point that you made earlier, I had a guy on my show the other day. His name is Dr. Makasa Africa Ma'at. In his youth, he was a gang member in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and he got in some trouble, gun charges, solicitation, breaking and entering. And the reason why I brought him on the show because he had those things happen to him when he was younger. He got in some trouble, but what he ended up doing was he ended up with 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in education, and he teaches at a school in Philadelphia now.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought him on the show because I wanted people to see a face of an individual who shows that mistakes that you made in the past does not dictate your future.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. And in addressing some of these regulations that make it more difficult for a person to move beyond their past is something that we in government can do. And in many cases, you can imagine how these regulations came into effect. Give example of you can't work in a senior facility if you had a criminal background. Well, probably what happened is that there probably was some famous case in Maryland where some guy worked at a, lack of a better term, an old folks home, and he or she stole somebody's money or fleeced somebody out of money. But family members do that. People without a criminal background do it. But it probably happened. It probably made the news, and some state senator or legislator stood on the floor of the House in Annapolis and said, "We will not let this happen again by passing this law, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And like I said, people's own family, fleece older family members, and people without a criminal background can do that. And so if it had occurred, several years ago, and you can decide how many years, 2, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, that should not be held against you forever. Now, like I said, there's certain areas that you may want to take a closer look. Like I said, when it comes to, sexual predators, you may want to be a little more concerned about that. But for a lot of the regulations that are in effect, most are in regulation and not necessarily in statute, that prevent people from having gainful employment or going into certain businesses because they've had this background.
There's a comment in the chat section from Joanne Bryce. She said, "So true. I've seen a few people lose their housing choice vouchers due to not finding a place in the normal time frame during the pandemic."
Okay. Yeah, I am not as familiar with the timelines associated with those vouchers, but that's something that we might be able to address. Talking to our Department of Housing and Community Development might be able to help in those areas.
It's I'm gonna ask this one question. We'll get back on the subject. As far as like the laws and regulations that you're talking about, would it help for people to actually, when the legislation comes into session, to actually come in and lobby for certain things, or
Well, I think it doesn't hurt to talk to your legislators about the term collateral consequences. We probably, and I'm just saying, we could probably do a better job in terms of focusing on this area. A lot of those regulations are in the different profession boards. The pharmacist board. I'm not saying that they're specifically to the pharmacists or the nursing or the physicians or the morticians board. The one I mentioned before was in the morticians regulations. Some of these different professional boards have these restrictions in them, and we could probably at the administration level do a better job of digging through a lot of those regulations and finding some more of them. But if there are people out there, constituents, that have faced this kind of issue, that would be helpful of them bringing it to our attention, either to the legislature's attention or to particularly, my office, where they found that they couldn't get a job because of a criminal background that was there. So that would be something, because we could look into that specific area, because there's a website out there, and it had stated that Maryland has some 200 of these type of restrictions in place. And we've only been able to address a few of them.
Okay. Well, back to Black History Month, sir.
Okay.
Does Maryland have any initiatives right now to for anything going on this month? I mean, I know we're in a pandemic. It is not, it's not a whole lot that can be done because of social distancing and all that stuff. But is there anything on the horizon for that we can look forward to this month?
Well, usually we would have, events at the State House, at the governor's mansion. The governor typically has a reception for Black History Month. There would be lectures, particularly at the Banneker Douglas Museum in Annapolis. But with the pandemic, there's a lot less of that. The governor put out a statement, and we did a video with the Banneker Douglas Museum. I issued a video. Actually, won't go up until Wednesday, on Black history to talk a little bit more about some of the people that don't often get talked about in Black History Month. We often talk about, your family member Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Thurgood Marshall, but we don't talk about, others, including James Webb and uh, William Seal, um, and different people that have been involved in Black history and particularly events.
Henry Highland Garnett, we don't from the Eastern Shore. We don't talk about
Yeah,
him. Moses Vernay, we don't talk about him.
mm-hmm.
Which is from
Webb is from Caroline County, and so we don't talk about a lot of the folks that have been very very integral to Maryland in particular, but national as well.
Who's your favorite historical Marylander?
Well, I probably, and of course, Frederick Douglass has a special place, but I think the first historic Marylander that I read anything about in any detail, probably back in maybe elementary school, was Benjamin Banneker. And partly that was due to the fact that I grew up in D.C. And Benjamin Banneker was involved in the design of the district. He was a surveyor when the District of Columbia was being laid out. And a lot of people say that when L'Enfant kind of walked away from the job, it was a lot of Banneker was the one who had the knowledge of what L'Enfant had planned for the district and was able to carry out a lot of those initiatives. So Banneker, because of, I think, the timing and the fact that, I was, being a Washingtonian, I thought a lot about him. Now, of course, as you know, Frederick Douglass had a house in D.C., in Southeast D.C., and I was able to go there not only when I was, living in D.C., because I had a summer job right down the street from there, actually, but I took my family there after being here, moving back to the area and being in Maryland, and took my family to Douglass's house there in Southeast.
They're doing a real good job of that house too.
Yeah, and I've been to the one in Highland Beach. I was there, I guess, maybe 2 years ago.
That's a beautiful house. The woodwork in that house is beautiful.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful house.
There was something I wanted to ask you. I just skip my.
Don't worry about that.
Oh, the $20 bill.
Oh,
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it would be, it would be a good thing to see happen. I think with most money, in a couple of years, you'll just get used to it and won't pay much attention to. I mean, I'm just being honest. I mean, how many times do you really look at, $20 bill? I know, what's interesting, a couple of years ago, they were talking about taking Hamilton off and putting Harriet Tubman on the $10 bill. And there were a lot of people, it really changed when the book came out and then the play, that they said, wait a minute, no, Hamilton's, a bit more important. But I was one that said, you're going to take Alexander Hamilton off of the $20 bill, or the $10 bill. But, Jackson don't have a lot of.
Yeah, he can go. He can go.
Yeah. You got enough, recognition anyway. So.
Yeah, I'd like to see a Frederick Douglass federal holiday on the 14th.
On the 14th of February.
Yeah, because that way you can celebrate the federal holiday, Frederick Douglass Day, and it's on Valentine's Day, so you get that day off with your wife.
Yeah.
It's a twofer.
Yeah,
but it's 20 after. I'm going to bring in the Harmony Project.
Oh, okay.
I want to introduce everybody and introduce you to you, sir, Mr. Lex Musta from the Harmony Cemetery Project. Lex, this is Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford.
Lex, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Lieutenant Governor Rutherford. Great honor to be with you. Hi, Terrence.
How you doing, man? Can you give us a rundown on the history of the Harmony Cemetery?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Lieutenant Governor Rutherford took down the Taney statue in 2017, and I kind of think like, what's going to replace it? And I think Project Harmony helped speak to that issue. Back in 1960, the most prestigious cemetery in Washington, D.C., because the African descent community came from all over the nation to Washington between the 1870s through the 1920s. So, you know, we have your family, Terrence, there, but we also have Elizabeth Kexley, we have Perry Osborne. I mean, 2 Medal of Honor winners there. It's just an incredible cemetery. And the plot owners fought in court against the Bell family, which was a group of real estate developers who wanted to make about $3 million off the taking of this valuable African descent land in DC. And they fought him in court, but the Bell family told the judge, we promised to make an African-American national monument out of this cemetery. So the judge said, go ahead. And of course he did not. And he took the headstones and he sold them off as riprap 80 miles south of DC. They were taken off to Virginia on a place called Stewart's Point. Just to picture this, 2 miles long, 16 or 30 feet wide. We don't know how far out in the water it goes. We don't know how deep it is. These 37,000 headstones, not everybody had a headstone, but many of these headstones ended up along that shoreline. So it provides this visual scape of desecration that's, I think, unequaled in America. I've never seen such a large representation of disrespect to our forebears anywhere in the country as that. And so this project is a cooperation, a bipartisan cooperation between Maryland, Virginia, and DC governments, plus the private sector, Hassan, which I'm a part of, all come together to restore some justice here. And I think we have a great opportunity. We're going to build 2 monuments. For those stones that can come up to Maryland, we're going to bring the headstones back up. For those that cannot come up, we're going to build a monument in the Potomac River that you can visit. It's actually, as soon as you leave the Virginia shoreline, you're actually in Maryland. So
right.
That monument
to Maryland.
is in Maryland.
And there's one more person. Mr. Hart is the descendant of the first African-American pharmacist, correct?
No, Professor Hart is the Rosa Parks of 1904. He desegregated interstate train travel for America by putting his own body at risk and took it all the way to Supreme Court and won. One day he's going to get known as well as Rosa Parks in this country.
Well, there he is, Mr. William Hart.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. How is everyone doing this fine evening, this cold, snowy evening?
Doing pretty good, sir.
Go well.
This is Mr. Hart. This is Lieutenant Governor Rutherford.
Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you, Lieutenant Governor Rutherford, and it is great to see you again, Lex. I'm honored to be here to participate in this project. So thank you for inviting me.
So I know the Lieutenant Governor has to go. He has like 7 more minutes.
Sure. I guess I should introduce myself, Lieutenant Governor. As Terrence said, my name is William Hart. I'm a descendant of Professor William Hart, that taught at Howard University criminal law for about 36 years. And he is one of Maryland's forgotten civil rights heroes in that the case that he won back in 1904, when Jim Crow was the law of the land. He, as an attorney at Howard, set out at that time to test that law. So what he did was he purchased a ticket from Boston, Massachusetts to Washington, D.C., and along with a very close friend of his, boarded the train in Boston. When the train got to the Mason-Dixon line, The conductor wanted him to move to the Jim Crow car. He refused, and they subsequently arrested him, fined him, and his friend that was traveling with him. And to make a long story short, he appealed and all the way up to the Maryland Supreme Court and prevailed that Maryland didn't have any jurisdiction over the interstate railway and interstate commerce. And this was and so ruled in the favor of Professor Hart. So his test was successful. And this was the first precedent-setting case. There were many after this that began the dismantlement of Jim Crow in the United States. So one of Maryland's little-known civil rights heroes. And I am so happy to be involved in this project. My connection to this project and Professor Hart's connection to this project, sir, is that Professor Hart was interred in the Harmony Memorial Cemetery, who had experienced the desecration that Lex has described. So in my family, when Harmony was moved to its current location in Maryland, we have been visiting Harmony Memorial in Landover for years and years, and never was there a marker for Professor Hart's grave. And I always wondered why, but never had an explanation. In fact, I thought that African Americans probably could not afford at that time markers. When Lex contacted me, I understand. I'm now understanding that I was wrong in that assumption. That there was actually a desecration that took place. So I'm happy to be a part of this project. Lex has been successful in getting the state of Virginia to help us out where the markers were found. And I do thank you for your participation in this project as well. I did thank Governor Northern when I met him the day before yesterday in an interview. And I want to thank you for your empathy and anything that you can do to assist. I am a citizen of the state of Maryland. So thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I guess your ancestor, he was also, as I understand, part of the Niagara movement as well.
Yes, there are many stories about him. He was one of the founders of the Niagara movement back in 1902. His portrait, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, hangs at the African American Museum downtown Washington. Oh. And yes, he was one of the founding members, and you know that organization was the precursor organization to the NAACP.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Another HU man, sir.
Yeah, you know
it. When there's one thing I want to say before the lieutenant governor leaves, I don't think there's a time that I ever called on the lieutenant governor or called on his office and he's ever told me no. This man is a very accessible man to be, as important a man as he is. I don't know how much longer you have in office, sir, but like I told Lex, and I think I've said it to you too. I think I told you, I said I hope that the governor runs for office, runs for the presidency.
Oh,
and didn't I say that? And
heaven forbid.
And I hope he takes you with him.
Larry can run. That's fine with him.
But you got to be VP. You got to be VP.
No.
You got to be VP. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. All right.
You got it. I don't want to hold you any longer than.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you, Lex and William.
Yes.
Pleasure meeting both of you all. I look forward to hearing more about the project and what Maryland's involvement is going to be, because I know the cemetery is now here in Maryland.
Yes.
And I understand there's plans for a memorial at the cemetery. But I guess we'll find out anything else that you plan to do in Maryland on that time, particularly as you transfer some of those headstones back to Maryland. So,
Right.
And I also appreciate your help, sir, well, it hasn't happened yet, but getting the process of having the Douglas brothers disinterred and reinterred at Arlington, which hopefully will happen this year.
oh, very good.
But it's everything's been approved. It's just the pandemic actually physically doing the work.
Right.
And I can't remember the name of the funeral home. I think you referred me to the funeral home. Oh my God, what's the?
Is it
Yeah,
Mark?
yeah, March Funeral Home.
Okay.
I got that connection from you, so thank you for everything that you did.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll take care, all. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
sir.
It was great to meet you, sir.
Likewise.
All right, so Lex.
So that was big news there, Terrence, that the Maryland government is going to be supportive of this project. We're so looking forward to working with them. So thank you for introducing us to him.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Got to get the word out, man. So you got to get it done because like y'all know. I mean, my ancestor was buried there too and moved, and his tombstone. We hadn't even found his body, and the best thing they could tell me was they could tell me what section he's in, and like I said, well, if we find his stone in that river, if you can't tell me where the body is, where do I put the stone?
Yeah, that's wow. I've often wondered of Professor Hart, if Professor Hart's body is really there. I think that in my thinking it is at least a 50-50 chance that it's not.
Yeah. And it's there's some of those bodies may still be in the original place.
Yeah.
They was never moved. I mean, if they thought so little of them to throw their stones in the river.
Yeah.
And then wasn't there an effort to get the stones back, and the individual who had them said, no, you can't have your own property back.
That's correct.
Yeah,
because he already had possession
of stolen property.
This was the earlier property owner, William.
Oh, okay. The earlier property owner.
Yeah,
Okay.
that effort was made in 1979. So about 19 years afterwards. Because, like I said, when that judge heard the deal, he said a national landmark, for African Americans, and so by 19 years you had seen the lie in that. So then the effort was made to go back and get it, and they didn't agree. One analogy, Terrence, I think is really interesting. You being on the Eastern Shore, and perhaps some of your listeners are. Do you know this man named Robert Fassenfeld? Have you heard that before? For me, he's the Bull Connor of the Eastern Shore. So if you remember back in 1963 when you had the whole National Guard there in Cambridge.
Gloria Richardson and H-Rap Brown and all that stuff.
Yep.
That it? Okay.
At that time. And so this guy, Robert Fassenfeld, took an egg and he slammed it on the head of one of the nonviolent protesters. And he said, I know the law, get your people get out, kind of send you back to Africa kind of statement. And I always wondered, how do these Bull Connor types get created? Because he didn't just come from somewhere. Like, he wasn't playing a role. He believed this. He hated this. And Race Street still divides the African-American European section of Cambridge, even today. This is 50 years later. We're like almost stuck in a time trap. And so I researched this guy. And he was born in Baltimore in 21, but he went to school in Trapp, Maryland in the 30s. And so I got the textbooks that he was reading. And one of the most amazing things about that textbook is it doesn't even mention John Dickinson, who should be the most famous Eastern Shore Marylander in history, because, of course, he signed the Declaration of Independence, and he was the only one of the signers who liberated all of his enslaved. And he was the richest man in Delaware at the time. So why isn't he celebrated? why don't we all know him? When we all talk about Dickinson, oh yeah, he's the one who gave it, who understood the full meaning of independence. And the fact that he was born in Trapp, he's a 6th generation Trapp resident. So, I mean, he is Trapp, Maryland, and he wasn't known. So I thought people like Robert Fassenfeld weren't even given an opportunity to esteem the history, the mutual history there. And so I followed very closely. Lieutenant Governor Rutherford has referenced this before, the unfortunate Confederate statue in Easton. And when they were trying to remove it, I was listening very carefully to the arguments that were being made to remove it or keep it. And I think that we have to move in a completely new mindset. And so when me and William often talk about this project, we talk about the restorative justice nature of it. And that's not meaning we just want to live side by side together. We now finally want to unite, as one and really come together. And one of the aspects of that is that in Maryland, the Union Army of the Eastern Shore, which is not represented on that statue, they actually were victorious against great odds over the individuals represented on the statue. And so specifically, Charles Mulkin was the captain of the Tarp Boys, and of the Trapp Boys, sorry. And so was Colonel James Wallace and Augustus Hennessy, Solomon Colburn, 12 NCOs and 67 privates. They all went to Gettysburg in 1863. And they faced off, outnumbered 5-1 against the Confederate soldiers from the Eastern Shore, the one who were on that monument. And they far outsmarted the former enslavers, because the enslavers aren't actually used to doing any hard labor. So they didn't even know really how to fight. And so these Union Army soldiers who were not enslavers, they actually built trench works, kind of predicting what would happen in Petersburg. And what happened in this battle was that they absolutely destroyed the Confederate soldiers. And these were friends, these were cousins. And right behind them was the actual supply line to the battle. So had they lost that battle and had the Confederate Eastern Shore soldiers overrun them, they would have overtaken that battle. So the people really to be esteemed in the Eastern Shore are the Trapp Boys, not the Talbot Boys, as the Confederate soldiers are known. The Trapp Boys should be esteemed. There's actually a monument to them in Gettysburg, and there's no monument to them in Easton. And so this is symptomatic of the restorative justice that will take place by honoring these graves, by bringing them back. And in the same way, I think that John Cowgill, who founded Unionville, he fought in the 108th United States Colored Troop, because later in 1863, all the Union armies, the United States Colored Troop armies joined, including Terrence. Your family joined the war effort, and they helped win the war. And that should be what is known and what is stored. So I think if Robert Fassenfeld knew all that and was taught all that, he would not have been this Bull Connor of the Eastern Shore. And so I look forward to working on the project with you.
I look forward to it too, man. I can't wait to get as many of those stones up out of that water.
Yeah,
I hope we find my ancestor that we're talking about is Perry Bailey, Frederick Douglass's older brother. And it's common. To me, it's common sense. It's common sense to me that he would have a stone, because he was buried by Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass would have gave his brother a stone.
yeah.
Right.
So, but there's people from the Eastern Shore that are watching this, and there's one thing that I noticed when we were there. There's a lot of Lewises, which there's a lot of Lewises here. There's a lot of people from Eastern Shore that migrated to the DC area. Back in that time, there's a lot of Lewises. I saw stones with the name Lewis on it, and there was a few other names. There was a good number of Baileys, right. and that Lewis, and then there was a few other names of people that are a lot of them here in Talbot County.
do you all recall the name Ferris in any of that, anything that was reclaimed?
Ferris? Not yet.
Ferris? Because I have some correspondence between Hart and Ferris, and I believe that Ferris, Hart had also back in the early 1900s founded the Hart Farm School for indigent children. So this was the precursor to DC Village in Washington, DC. And Ferris was one of his supporters and had a role in the school. And I thought that I may have saw a gravestone with that name on it. So I'll need to go back to my notes to see what I could find.
William, you were just at the shoreline, so you got to see it for the first time with your own eyes close up. You want to share any of your impressions of actually seeing this 2-mile stretch of stones? Yeah,
so it was a very cold day that day and very windy. And when I walked down to take a look at the stones, it's an incredible sight. The markers are just everywhere, all over the shoreline, tossed around and commingled with some red brick that I understand was a part of a structure that was on the old Harmony Cemetery in DC that apparently must have been bulldozed or otherwise destroyed, and included along with the other desecrated materials. So it was a surreal moment looking at all of that stuff. While I was there, standing in front of it, Mrs. Stewart came over to me and pointed out actually the red bricks and explained to me what I'm describing now. Again, I want to point out the generosity of Virginia Senator Stewart and his wife and family in recognizing this atrocity and in actually donating something of value to try to make it right in a display of empathy, which I certainly wasn't expecting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a surreal sight. I too hope that we find a marker with Professor Hart. I would have expected him to have one, like I had described to the Lieutenant Governor and my family. We just thought that they couldn't afford one, and I always thought that was so odd for Professor Hart. It just seemed odd, and I had made up my own reality that they didn't buy one. And then I got a call from Lex, mm-hmm. And that changed everything that I've been understanding for the last 50 years about that situation.
And you're not unique in that mistaken belief. The Plummer family voiced the exact same feeling.
Really?
Exactly what you said. And so I'm just thinking, amongst the 37,000 families, how many thousands of people have suffered that same trauma, when they made the same journey. And so it's so important, I think, that the memorial that we're constructing will have mention of all 37,000 families. So therefore, when you go there, you will now at least see a mention of your family name instead of just an empty field.
And you're right. It is a trauma, and I think that speaks to the utility of your restorative justice theme. When I made up my own reality about what happened to the markers, I wasn't pleased by the reality that I fabricated. It was hurtful to think that my family and such an esteemed person would not be able to afford the simplest of markers. This project, while I know the goal certainly is restorative justice, and Lex, you've talked about restorative from the point of view of the various communities that are being impacted. And I think that my story of restorative justice is on a micro level. We've talked before how I use what we're doing when I talk to my grandchildren. And discuss Professor Hart and current events and what Professor Hart did. And this certainly is lightens their spirit. They're very interested in learning about their ancestor. And I would imagine experience a sense of pride upon hearing that. So I believe that in a more personal way for me, this restorative theme has some actual utility in my life regarding how we've used it. So it is an excellent goal, I believe, for us to ascribe to.
Yeah, one of the things that drew me to this project, I was trying to honor this gentleman who I have in the picture behind me here, Louis George Gregory. He was a student of Professor Hart at Howard University, and he dedicated his life to racial amity. And so one of the challenges that he laid before me was that he said that somebody of European descent can benefit a lot by trying to honor and work for mutual advancement with somebody of African descent. So as a paradigm for the country, I see a lot of value in that, because even if you don't know that much about the African American history in your city, African American History Month really gives a calling for you to go visit the local cemetery. In some cases you have to dig it out because some cemeteries are very neglected. And every name there tells a story and is connected to people. Like I'm meeting Terrence and yourself here today. This would have been just an empty field, but now there's people who are alive, families who are alive, stones that are going to be coming back. So it's a whole opportunity for every American, I think, to get involved in this general movement and in connecting with families, connecting to stories, and not just thinking of this as a history month for somebody else. This is America's History Month. This community is amazing. The debt we owe to Professor Hart for helping us have the model to desegregate the train affects every one of us, because every one of us went to school in an integrated school in my lifetime. And so therefore, we benefited directly from Professor Hart's work or from the work of Terrence's family. Then all of a sudden it becomes your history, but you can't get to there until you go to look in your local cemeteries and connect to these families and find out their stories. And I think we all benefit for it. And I hope that this project inspires many Americans to begin taking a fresh look at African American History Month in the context of who should you be honoring in your city.
Hey guys, I want to share a quick video, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Can you see the video?
Yes.
Yes.
Is Dr. Kelly Fonto Deep. I'm co-founder and co-president of Hassan, its History, Arts, and Science Action Network. We are a nonprofit dedicated to racial reconciliation through repatriation of human remains, and a project like this, which we're taking cemetery stones from a very important cemetery in Washington, D.C. that were brought away from that cemetery in 1960, dumped down here in Virginia on the shoreline, and the bodies were then removed and most of them brought to Harmony Cemetery in Maryland. And this project is about bringing the families together, getting the actual stones returned to the families and to the actual remains of the people who were moved back in 1960. And it is an honor to be part of this project. And this is the very start of something that's going to be huge. And I'm here with someone very important, so I'm gonna stop talking and just go ahead and let you go, Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin Douglas Green, great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglas. And I'm just honored to be here to represent the Douglas and Bailey family, because as I was telling people earlier, we are still one family. But on behalf of also the Frederick Douglas Family Initiative, you know, my part of this project is as a family member, is not only to try to recover the headstones of my immediate family, which is my grandfather Haley Douglas and my grandmother Evelyn Douglas, but also great grandfather and other people, other Douglas families. But the project in itself is bigger than the Douglas family. There are other families here that are here to try to claim and recognize their family members and hopefully find headstones. But the whole project is because there's a wrong that was done 60 years ago, is to try to make it right for as many family members from the Washington D.C. area as possible, from the Columbia Harmony Cemetery when it was moved, and the gravestones were relocated here on the shore of the Potomac River, not on the Maryland side, but the Virginia side, which is, but that, we can find as many of these stones as possible. And the project has different phases to try to remember and recognize everyone, one by, like I said, returning the stones to their family members, creating a memorial, not only here in Virginia where these stones are found, based on using some of those that can't be identified here, so they can be remembered, to know that this happened here. But it's important for people to know why these stones were here. And then also returning stones to the New Harmony Cemetery, to the sites where the particular family members are buried. And then also just creating a connection and with the sons and daughters of Harmony Cemetery. So, beautiful day. I mean, we have a lot of people out here working that aren't even connected to the cemetery itself. I mean, the family, the family here that owns the property is working just as hard as the officials or any government officials or anybody. So my hat's off to the family. Great people working hard, trying to make right here in the 21st century. So Pleasure to be here with my West Coastie right here,
Exactly.
North, North Cal.
Yeah, exactly. Big distinction. We are
North
not from
Cal.
LA.
Yeah, North Cal.
The eyes roll.
California is a special place.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
So that was filmed on the at the location. I did the video with Kevin and the other lady's name.
Dr. Kelly Dietz.
Yeah, Dietz. Yeah, Dr. Dietz. Yeah. Um.
That was a good day. The governor was there to announce support for the project, and since then he's appropriated $5 million for the project.
Yeah. And then we have the one guy that has the adventure show, the reality show that was out there on a kayak.
Justin Fernal and Dr. Kelly Dietz, they founded Hassan, which is the nonprofit organization that's spearheading this project. They have provided a very critical role to really bring together the governments, to bring together the families, and the extensive experience they have in this restorative justice work. So we're really honored to have Hassan lead this project.
I mean, this whole thing is a very emotional thing. I mean, just the thought of it. I mean, you would take someone's headstone and use it to keep your land from eroding. We got a family member just came in. Hey, cousin.
Hello.
Hey, Kevin.
Hello, everyone.
Just played your video. The video we did out on that where the tombstones was out on the farm. You and Dr. Dietz.
Oh, I thought you was talking about when I made that sack in our championship game. Okay.
No. No, it's talking about the when we're out there with the tombstones.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I
was on our Black History kickoff call for Middle Tennessee State University because I'm on their committee, so I was on that call first. But we just ended, so.
Yeah. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah.
So the lieutenant governor got off about a half an hour ago. So we're just putting out the word, all the information on the Harmony Cemetery. What do you think about the? I mean, what are your thoughts on the potential the monument to be made?
Well, one thing, because I did send information on my thoughts. One is because actually Lex Maya texted me about 2 hours ago, just asking me about because she wasn't able to hit the meeting. But my thought one is the names is the only way to be all inclusive. Any type of statue or figure, it's hard to do that and to get that well, in my mind, that represents everyone. So my thoughts was that our biggest asset on this is the headstones, is incorporating the headstones in a way that represents everyone. So like we said, we have headstones that have names. We have headstones that don't have names. And those are from my perspective, is what represents everyone. So I think those have to be included some way. Just like I think was it Mr. Hart? You had on your presentation, you had showed those monuments down in Virginia, was it? correct?
That was Steve Hammond's presentation.
Oh, that was okay. That wasn't her. That was the other one.
No. Yes.
Which, yeah, and you know, I was looking at stuff, trying to find stuff myself before I sent my information in. And of course, you know, there's the wall, Vietnam Wall. There's the African American Civil War Memorial, and the couple of aspects on that and even with the part of it's, I guess that has to be incorporated into the budget on anything because over time is maintenance on depending on the type of materials and stuff you use. You know, you can't go cheap if you're going to do something that you want there to be there for generations, or for the rest until until the world ends. But like I was saying, it's just the way to incorporate let those headstones be the voice. And so I don't know. I think I mentioned that depending on how many people or descendants, like you said, Lex, you want the ideas of the descendants because it's ours. It's you want us to be part of it because it is ours. And so I just halfway mentioned to her that to give an idea of what somewhere to start because all of us could come up with each descendant could come up with a totally different idea, and then we're going over just say aspect we're going over 100 different ideas. If someone, her as the artist kind of has an idea and say, hey, here's some thoughts based on stuff that she has done, that might help us narrow down what we want as descendants instead of us going out looking at everything ourselves. But that's a good idea too.
I gotta say, I'm completely stumped. I haven't even filled it out yet. I mean, I think about the wall thing, and then I think about I can't even form a thought of how to incorporate the actual stones into it because, I mean, how do you keep them from further eroding? I mean, they wouldn't have to be treated with something or something, some type of refurbishing to them or something.
Well, I'm sure they'll be better off than they were when we found them. I mean, there's a way to treat them so that they are better off than they were sitting on the water, sitting on the shore. So they can be some way, I'm sure, treated and maintained. But if the names, the ones that the names are there, they're not going away anytime soon, as long as they've been there. And the ones that don't have names, that's just limestone and stuff. That's just the way those are gonna be from my thoughts. Because I know there's always the possibility also of having some, and that costs money. Having some remade, but how do you incorporate that? I don't know, but we couldn't do that for it. I can't see that doing that for everybody. Because we don't know if everybody actually had one.
Yeah, and then
we're talking about that time frame. Not everybody, because some people couldn't afford a burial, much less a headstone. So,
and it's estimated that what tombstones were there is at 31,000, right?
No, we don't know that.
We don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Even then, from 1825 to 1870, we have 0 records. So the oldest we don't know, except for those exceptional few that were noted to be there from that time in other history books. But the cemetery records themselves, they don't even go back.
See,
Well, they can't find the records to my ancestor, and he died in 1880.
Hmm.
They you know what I'm saying? My great grandfather, Kevin's uncle.
Yeah.
They can't even find his. I've been waiting for about a year and a half for them because they said that they're not just they go back too far for them to be in a computer, so they'll be on a card or something, which they claim is in storage. I've been waiting for them to so-called quote unquote go into storage and to produce this hard copy for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
See, now my thought, when I was thinking about it, those blank, if we could have any of the blank um, headstones, because I know they were talking about using some of those down in Virginia, also on the shore, but
Mm-hmm.
that kind of represents the idea of the unknown, quote unquote, soldier, the unknown burial. We know there's people there, but we don't know, like you said, don't have records of everyone. So that kind of represents those unknowns.
I like that, Kevin. That's a well-established kind of feeling across the world. There's many places we're in a situation of unknowns, but we still want to remember them in a significant way. And the unknown soldier in Arlington, of course, is one that comes to mind, but you see that across the world. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and this is using using those stones or a stone or whatever that was there, even though you can't read the name. It's not recreating something. It's using something that was originally there to represent, compared to creating something brand new. And that's the difference in a lot of monuments is they were creating, they had to create those then. This is a whole different situation. You're using something from that time frame to represent that time frame. So
Yeah. But since you got Kevin on, it's Black History Month. Because I remember you was talking about as a young man, Carter G. Woodson
hmm
coming by the house as a kid.
oh, the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story my mother told. Like I said, just to go through the story, to put it, preference it the way it was. We were in. I met my mom and dad in Sacramento for something. I was living in Oregon. I came down and it was in February, so we went to this Black History program, and they had the trivia sheets on the table. So they had pictures, and then on the back side it had the names. So you look at the pictures, and you're supposed to write down the name of the person of who you thought it was. And we were able to get them all except for two. And my mom would look at them. She says, I remember these people. They used to come by the house and visit my father all the time. And then when you turn it over to figure out which names were missing, like I said, it was Carter G. Woodson and Asa Philip Randolph. Used to come over my grandfather's house, and and Carter G. Woodson and my grandfather were both Harvard alums, and Carter G. Woodson was part of Dunbar High School at one time, so they knew each other through being alums and through education, and Northwest DC for Black folks during that time was a smaller population, and not poppy, but microcosm
Mhm.
around the Northwest than it is now. So every they say struck, because I think what from people telling my grandfather there, and I have the deed, even though they tore all that stuff down, was part of Strivers, around Strivers Row, where Duke Ellington and all those folks live. Um, so yeah, so that's one of those interesting stories that one of the few that I have from my mom with notable names.
Yeah, I remember. I remember you told you alluded to it here at the Bethel AME Church. here in Easton.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you gave the speech for the rededication of the churches.
Yes. Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What's the next plans for the project?
So the project, you can get to the project cemetery.com. And so we're
You
still trying to gather together descendants. Obviously, we have 37,000 families to pursue.
you're
Is he
breaking.
breaking? Is he breaking up for you?
Yeah, you're breaking
Yeah,
up, Lex. Your Wi-Fi is messing up.
yeah, Lex is breaking up.
Okay, you want to take it?
You're going digital on us.
Okay. You take it
That
away, Terrence. I'll let William or you speak to the next step.
zeros and ones, man. Zeros and ones.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go ahead and try to speak for Lex regarding what's next. So to talk about what's next, let's just talk about what we've already done in summary. And that is we have secured uh, support from the state of Virginia via Governor Northen's allocation of $5 million of budget to this project. And I would say the value of what Virginia has already provided, once the budget is approved, would be significantly more than $5 million because the land that is being donated by Congressman Stewart and his wife and family does have significant value itself, and probably in the millions of dollars. So that has already been accomplished. What you've done today is allowed this organization to move into the direction of securing that same type of support from Maryland via Lieutenant Governor Rutherford. So the next steps from here, as it relates to Maryland, would be to lobby us that live in Maryland, to lobby our elected representatives about this project and let them know how important it is to us that they support it. I see that as the very next logical step after what we've been able to do with Virginia, and basically repeat the same process with Maryland. The meeting with Lieutenant Governor Rutherford is significant tonight in that we know that he supports this effort, and that channel of communication to his office has been opened between his office and us. And so this is progress. So we need to mature that relationship with the same goal that we had for our Virginia relationship, and then turn around and do the same thing again. Once we're successful with Maryland, turn around and do the same thing again in the exact same way with DC. So those are the immediate next steps, and they would be involved in the part of this project that concerns itself with the acquisition of the necessary funding. Beyond that, once funding is in place, then I believe Hassan would be free to do the necessary project planning that has to occur to create the memorials and start actually executing those plans. So I think that that's kind of what remains to be done in summary and where we are. Did I leave out any tasks, do you think, Lex?
Is my audio a little better?
Oh, it's much better.
I added into the chat the website if anybody wants to financially support the project at hassanworldwide.org. There's a give button. And if you want to join the project and participate in it and lend your skills and your prayers, www.projectharmonycemetery.com to join. But otherwise, William, I think you hit all the next major points that we're pursuing, because there's 2 monuments being built, one in Virginia and one in Maryland. And so we'd love to have support from both. And of course, the DC government, I think, comes next, William, after the government supports the project.
Yes. So you're muted, Terrence.
Gotta be smarter than the cursor. We're going to pass it around and get final words, and let's go get some dinner. I'm going to start from my bottom left hand side. Hey, cousin, you want to give final words?
Well, I thank everybody for for you guys' efforts, because you guys are mainly in the ground zero area, even though it's ground zero's several hundred miles difference traveling wise, but you guys doing some really good work with Hassan and everyone else that's involved. So that's very encouraging. And the idea with stuff like this, with anything, it requires support, requires funding, and the two go together. You can't get it's hard to get one without the other. Requires organization. So that's all part of the equation also. So so far everything is going well, and even though you like to create timelines, just like 2020, those timelines were interrupted with with the pandemic, which still is going to dictate how and when we can do things for a while. But it doesn't stop communication. So as long as we keep that going, that's great. And also, Terrence, just as a FYI, Hawthorne show representative contacted me, so I'm going to be doing a broadcast on, I believe it is February 14th, and that will probably be 12 o'clock Eastern time, midnight. Yeah,
I didn't think you would do it that late, but
we looked at other, I was like, well, for me that's 11 o'clock. I was like, well, I'll just take a nap, and I do what I can when I can. So it's not like I'm gonna be go anywhere or anything. So yeah, but thanks a lot. I concede the rest of my time to the next presenter.
as a politic answer. Mr. Hart.
So when I was with Governor Northern and Virginia Senator Stewart a few days ago, and thanked them, and particularly Governor Northern, for his budget allocation and for his empathy with us on this project. He replied to me that the allocation of this budget to to this project is a reflection of Virginia's values. And as I have been thinking about that over the last couple of days, I've been reflecting on the fact that both Virginia and Maryland were the first two states before even the formation of the United States that were early participators in the American form of slavery. And certainly at that time, that institution of slavery was reflective of the values of both Virginia and Maryland. So for Hassan, through its extraordinary efforts to be convincing to a state like Virginia with the type of notoriety that it has, to have its governor state that we have some new values now, is extraordinary. And I think that it does instantiate the methodology that you're actually repeating with Maryland. And Maryland also had a similar role. I think Maryland was a little bit better at slavery than Virginia was, because Virginia was first and they let Virginia make all the mistakes. And Maryland benefited by being able to implement their version much more efficiently than Virginia was. So I think that we will be successful in getting a similar value proposition change from Maryland, and the method that you have discovered to be convincing in this particular situation that Hassan has certainly has been effective, and Hassan has taken has done this within the right context. It's the right time to do something about this, to be restoring this justice in this way. So I am honored to be a part of this project, and I want to thank all of you for caring about this and for your work in advancing this. It's a worthy cause.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
You're welcome.
Lex.
Terrence, you give me a little deja vu. 4 years ago on African American History Month, I was on DLM radio in Anacostia with Kamon, and we were promoting this project. And look how far we've come in 4 years. At that time, Hassan had not yet joined the project. Senator Stewart had not yet given us permission to come on his land. The Virginia government had not been involved. It was just that a wish to join. And now this year, Brian Scott, who's another descendant of the cemetery, he had me on his news program. And now, Terrence, you and your audience are sharing with us here today. So I'm grateful to you all just to show how important it is to have these alternative media outlets to allow us to share this important work and advance it. And I'm so glad that we're now at a point of execution of the project. 51 stones have already come out of the river. One of them was of a 4-year-old child. And you think, how easily that little stone could have just sat there on the side of the river another 50 years. But then it came out. And whose stone was this? It was the grandson of James Wormley from the Wormley Hotels. And now a number of Wormleys are in the project. And so I just think of that, just thinking of a 4-year-old child whose passing was so tragic in 1898 is now becoming a center of reigniting effort from the family, from the community, from the government to do something we've never seen before. When I was born in Maryland, it wasn't even ratified yet. The 15th Amendment, with the right to vote, was still not ratified when I was born. So it's just hard to imagine how far we've come, and that this project gives a real model for the country. And I'm so grateful to Hassan, to Dr. Kelly Dietz, and Justin Fernal for lending their support, which was critical in moving us forward. And of course, the government of Virginia and now the government of Maryland, DC, are going to follow suit. So, Terrence, thank you for having this, and audience, thank you for sharing your time with us and learning about this project. There's lots of room for support, and I look forward to getting to know you all, just as Kevin and William have gotten to know them well, two great, noble individuals and leaders in this country, who it's wonderful that this project will give a greater amplification of their voice to, and the voices of their families, which are so critical to our past and even more critical to our future.
Thanks, Lex. Appreciate everybody for coming to the show. Thanks to Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford for sharing some of his time with us after working all day for doing his state, being the lieutenant governor, which is not an easy job. Thanks, cousin, for coming in. You just got off a Zoom call and you jumped right on in here with us. I appreciate it. Mr. Hart, thank you for coming in and sharing the story about your ancestor, Professor Hart.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate everybody for coming in. And I'm going to let everybody, cousin, let you get to your grandkids, and Lex, let you get to your kids. And I'm going to get me something to eat because I'm a little hungry. And I appreciate everybody for watching. And we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I'll be back tomorrow at 3:00 with Jonathan Moloch. He was the producer of the music for the Biden inauguration. So that's tomorrow, 3:00 Eastern Standard Time. Hit the like button, subscribe. See you tomorrow.